Okay, so if you could, I'd just like you to tell me a little bit about your name.
Yes.
Okay, you were born as
Adam Goldberger.
right, and then at one point you changed your name.
I changed my name after coming to the United States because my first cousin, who was living for years in United States already, changed his name to Garrett for I don't know for what reason, but he did, and my mother urged me to change my name to his name for whatever reason, I don't know. So I knew that if my mother wants something, I either do it or I never live it down. So I changed my name during naturalization,
Right.
to Garrett. So I became Garrett.
And then you had your wife as Garrett and
My wife
and your daughter.
had to change to Garrett. Also my daughter changed to Garrett, except my son who didn't want to change it. Apparently Goldberger is a good name for lawyers, so he stuck with it.
So how long did you keep the name Garrett for? How long did you use the name Garrett? From what years?
I used it since 1964.
1964 till when?
All the time.
Still-
I'm still Garrett.
Are you still
I
Garrett?
am still Garrett. My citizenship certificate is with the name of Garrett,
Right.
and on the other side of the certificate it says that was changed from Goldberger.
Okay, and your son was born in 1961?
61 years.
So what year did he refuse to change his name to
He didn't refuse it. He just didn't change it.
so he was Goldberger from when he was born?
He was Goldberger. He still is Goldberger.
Right. So when you did your naturalization, that was in what year? 1967?
1964.
1964. So that was only 3 years after.
After his birth.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So today we're just going to make a little film, and I appreciate you participating.
Yeah.
If you could each just introduce yourself, maybe your name and where you were born and what year. We could start from there.
Yeah, but I will use my old name.
Sure.
Otherwise, nobody will know who the heck is the.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So now, is it on?
Yes.
On. Okay. Action.
Yeah.
You have to say action. That's right.
Okay.
Okay. My name is Adam Goldberger. Born in Krakow, Poland. In October 1924.
Okay.
And you are?
Ruth Goldberger, born in Krakow, in Poland. The year was 1927, April. In April 1927.
Okay. And if you could just briefly just give us like a little description about what your life was like, what your family was like, you know, as a child. Did you have brothers, sisters? What was your life like then?
You want to?
You go first.
Oh, my father was artist. He painted pictures, and he was very well known in Poland. And my sister was a dancer. She was teaching later dancing. And my mother was a pianist.
Okay. And Adam?
Yeah, my father was a dentist, which was the norm for my family, where almost every male, except myself, was also a dentist, spread all over Poland in all kinds of little towns, with the exception of my uncle, who was an eye doctor instead.
Did both of you live in the city, or did you live outside?
I lived in the city,
In Center City, yes.
Center City.
Center City, very, very good location.
Okay, and if I understand correctly, when you were growing up, there was a Jewish section of Poland in Krakow,
Yes.
and a non-Jewish section of Poland, which may have been a little bit nicer. And where did you live?
I live where not the Jewish, very few Jews were there.
We lived
In the center.
in the Polish section of Krakow.
Okay.
The Jewish section was called Kazimierz, which was the name of the Polish king, who was friendly to Jews, and the section where the Jews lived had his name. Yeah, but professional Jews did not live in that Jewish section. Lived outside of the Polish section, which was much larger.
Okay.
The Jewish section was quite small. It's still plenty of Jews live there, but mostly non-professionals.
Adam, did you have a bar mitzvah when you were young?
Oh yes, I did have a bar mitzvah, a very, very, very big and good bar mitzvah. Ice cream, I remember, was ordered from the best. How do you call this in English? Best coffee house in Krakow. I remember that, and all those dentists and other relatives came in too. And when I went back to Poland in 1996, I went to the synagogue where I had bar mitzvah, and the synagogue was still there. It was in the process of being renovated. I have a picture in my book of that synagogue. Mm-hmm. I still remember that.
Did either of you go to Jewish camps as children, like summer camps, or were you in this?
Yeah, I went because I went to the Hebrew school.
Right. Okay.
And in summertime they have always like colony.
Right.
And we went.
Okay.
And sometimes I went with my father to Nowy Targ where he painted the gypsies.
Right. Did you find a lot of anti-Semitism when you were in Poland as a young person, like a child and a teenager?
I did not really. I did not. My anti-Semitism came to play when I was supposed to go to high school. It was very hard for a Jew to get a state high school. No, I didn't, of course. So,
could you each share your experience of what it was like when World War II started? What was it like to be a young person in Poland when the war started? Did you anticipate that it was going to happen? Was it a surprise?
No, because I think it was on the third day of the war. On the radio we heard that England and France joined the Polish army and gave kind of a guarantee to the Polish government that unless the Germans will leave Poland and stop the stop the war, they will join Poland against Germany. They will declare war on Germany. When I heard this, that was my reaction was, oh, that's fine. The whole thing will be over in about 3 weeks. I said, well, you know, who knew it's going to take another 5 years for the thing to end.
So neither one of you had an expectation that maybe you ought to get out of Poland also at that point?
Not at that point, no.
I felt the anti-Semitism when I went to the first grade. I was 5 years old, and they said to me, you know, the dirty Jew and this, and I said, you killed the Christ. So I said, it's not true because the Christ was Jewish. And then I went to the Hebrew school because I couldn't stand this.
Right.
Hebrew high school, very
well known. And they have gymnasium too. And when the war started, I finished first gymnasium. After sixth class, you went to the first gymnasium.
Gymnasium is Polish for high school.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so when the war started,
Yeah.
and you were both living in Krakow, you did not know each other then.
No.
What was life like when the war started?
It was terrible because we were all scared. I was scared, I don't know. Everybody was scared. I think they ran away and they were afraid because they bombarded too. But we didn't know what will happen like this.
So what happened in Austria didn't really seem to affect you too much in Poland?
Yeah, they throw me out because we were in the center.
Right.
So first were the people that were living, you know, in this section.
Right.
So they throw us out, and we went to a small village, and you need to pay money to be, you know, they register you. And then from there, we need to go together because they said nobody can live nowhere.
So that's when you went in. That's when you went into the ghetto in Krakow.
Yeah, in Krakow.
We stayed in our own apartment, the pre-war apartment.
Right.
And my mother had a friend, a German, ethnic German woman, she stemmed from Sudetenland. That's the part of Czechoslovakia where mostly Germans lived. She was a very good friend of my mother, and she told my mother, you know what, if you want to keep your apartment, you better rent one of your rooms to a German officer. And she sent a very high-ranking SA officer. SA, that were the SA is short for I forgot what this was. Anyway, it was not SS. It was something like SS. He was a high officer, and we rented him a room. Of course, we didn't say that we were Jewish. Mother didn't say that, because if she did, he would just requisition the whole apartment, not only one room. And that was a big mistake, because we should have known that finally he's going to find out that we're Jewish.
Right.
So, and he did, because the superintendent of our house was also coincidentally a German, ethnic German. So she denounced us, and 5 o'clock in the morning one day, after maybe 3 weeks. 3 weeks after we rented the apartment to the German officer, 5 o'clock in the morning, we were woken up by 6 SS men, told to get dressed, and they took us in a car which was waiting downstairs to the Montelupich prison, which was at that time the Gestapo prison, and before the war it was a military prison. And we wound up at the prison with only what we had on ourselves, with nothing. We lost everything. The Germans took over the apartment. Fortunately, the maid, live-in maid, we had a live-in maid, a Polish girl. She was very friendly, no trace of anti-Semitism in her, and she stayed to serve the Germans, which occupied that apartment now. So we were, after 3 weeks of incarceration, we were released. Again, that friend of my mother arranged with her Gestapo friends to have us released, and we were thrown out on the street from the prison, again was what only stuff that we had on ourselves, nothing, and nowhere to go either, because the apartment was gone. So we found a place at mother of one of my friends, Jew, who went with me to the high school, and who, incidentally, he lived only a few houses away from where our apartment was. So we stayed there for a while. There was no real anti-Jewish
Sentiment, anger.
Enacted yet.
Yeah.
So.
How old were you then?
How old?
Yeah.
It was 45. I was 21.
I was in 45, but how old were you when you were staying with your friend's family in Poland? In other words, when you were let out of prison, where did you go? How old were you then?
But it was in 45.
It was in 45, so you were...
45, it was finished the war.
That was at the end of the war. What did you do during the war, though? And when you got arrested,
You were
originally you jumped 5 years. So what happened when you were thrown out of your apartment until the end of the war?
Oh, yes, I see. Yeah, it was 39
Right,
at
right.
that time.
Right.
39. It was not 21, it was 20.
Yeah, 39, I was 15.
Okay.
15, that's all.
So when you were 15, you lost your apartment, you went to prison. They eventually let you out of prison
Yes.
after 3 weeks.
Yes.
Where did you go then?
We went to an apartment of the parents of one of my friends who went with me to high school.
Right.
Only his mother was present, and she had room, so she took us in, me and my mother, she took us in. She that friend of mine also had a sister, and his sister was there too, but there was enough room for us.
Was this in the Jewish section of Krakow or not?
It was in the non-Jewish section.
Non-Jewish section, I
Good
get that.
center
Right.
of Krakow.
So how long did you stay there?
There we stayed maybe 2 weeks till again that friend of my mother, that woman, German woman, found for us a furnished room in the same house where she lived, the same apartment building, only downstairs, she lived upstairs. And we moved into that furnished room, and there we stayed for quite some time. That
Go ahead.
that German woman also had a friend who was a manager of the Gestapo garage, which also coincidentally happened to be right around the corner where we had that furnished room.
Right.
And she arranged for me to work in that garage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I worked for the rest of the war.
So you worked at the garage,
In
right?
the garage.
Except when?
Except in 1942. I think it was in October 1942, they took all of us workers in the garage and took us to that same prison where I was in prison in 1939 and locked us up there. Not only us, but the Gestapo had about 100 other Jewish workers who were employed as workers for the Gestapo, all kinds of trades. And they took us to that prison and they separated a section of the prison with cells or rooms for their workers, us also. We 20 garage workers had a separate.
Why did they take you to prison if you were working at the garage and living at the garage before that?
Because the ghetto was about to be. Oh, I missed the part where we moved to the ghetto.
Uh-huh.
In the ghetto, Gestapo also arranged for the workers, for their works, to have a separate apartment house where we lived. But when the ghetto was about to be liquidated, they didn't want us to be deported with the rest of the Jews. They wanted to have us still in Krakow working for them, so they took us again to this prison,
Right.
where they separated special sections for us.
Okay, so you worked at the prison for at the garage for the whole war. You didn't really go to a camp anywhere.
No.
And then the war ends. Okay, when the war ends,
Yeah.
what happens to you?
Well, it was much sooner than the war. See, Krakow was liberated in January,
Right.
about 4 or 5 months before the end of the war. So
So what happens? What happens when it's liberated?
as I explained before, I was driving a car with 2 German officers sitting behind me, and one of them was well known to be very cruel, especially toward the Jews. He was a superintendent of the SS school in Rabka, which is a very nice little town not far from Krakow. Well, they sit behind me, and we drove towards Germany, of course, and we stopped to sleep overnight at a place called Skawina, which is not important, and I went to sleep too with German soldiers and SS men, which were retreating, and they were commiserating, you know, as an army in retreat, it always is. And they didn't know I was Jewish. They thought I was just a civilian who works for the army. Now, before I went to sleep, I said that I don't think that my car has antifreeze in it. It was very cold. It was the middle of January. So I told to my so-called passengers that I have to drain the water from the radiator in order not to freeze, not to have it freeze. So I opened the drain cock and drained the water out of it, and I especially did not close it after I drained it, because I knew the next morning I won't be able to close it because it will be frozen. And this is what happened. The next morning I say, you know, I can't close the petcock because it's froze. I have to go to a farmer whose hut was right next door, and get some hot boiling water and pour into the radiator to be able to close it and fill it. So I took a water can and went towards that farmer's house, and when I was out of sight of the Germans, I just kept going. I dropped the can and I kept going in a knee-deep snow and cold, and I kept going, and I never stopped till I was a mile maybe away, and I knew they're not gonna run after me because they have to escape towards Germany, because they were deadly afraid of the Russians. Incredible, they were afraid to fall in the hands of the Russians. So I kept going and going and going, and in the evening I reached a small Polish village, I don't know the name of it, and one of the villagers saw me and said, who are you? What are you doing here? So I said, I'm a Pole which escaped from a transport taking me to Germany to work, for forced labor. Oh, I said, oh yeah, he says, he was the local barber. You know what, come with me, I'll give you a place to sleep, you can sleep here. And I said, okay, fine, thank you. 9 o'clock, still a German came in for a haircut, and I went to sleep. They gave me a bed with an extra room, beautiful. Anyway, I woke up in the morning and I see Russian tanks out of the window. I see. So I said, oh, okay, well, then I'm saved, and I'm born again. I said, well, the Russians are here, and then, you know, I'm out of the reach of the Germans. I thank him for the night, for the place to sleep he gave me, and he was very kind. That barber, Polish barber, he gave me a couple pieces of bread, and I went in the direction of Krakow. It was still about 8 miles away, Krakow, and I went Krakow, walking on the side of the road, because the Russian military was going in the opposite direction, you know, and all over were dead horses that even dead Germans not yet picked up, and I was happy that my life was saved, actually. So I finally reached Krakow, and I had to cross the Vistula River. The bridge was blown up by the Germans after they retreated, but the river was frozen solid, and people were walking on the ice, you know. So I went on the ice too. I crossed the river, and my old house, apartment building where I lived before the war, was a couple blocks away. So I went back there, and I went to my apartment, which was now occupied by some Poles, and I saw all our belongings, our drapes and everything, and pictures. We had a very big picture gallery in our apartment. I never found till today I don't know what happened to those pictures. They were great, beautiful pictures of very famous Polish painters. So I went there, and in my apartment now lived a Polish neighbor who lived in the neighboring apartment, but our apartment was much nicer, and he thought maybe that I want some of my stuff. I said, no, I don't want anything. And then he tried to intimidate me, and he called some Polish militiamen in there. I said, no, I don't want anything. And I went to the garage where I worked, and I found out that the rest of the guys that worked there with me now occupied the apartment of, I already told you that, they occupied the apartment of the chief of the garage, which now was a garage of the Polish police.
Why didn't you want to take any of the possessions from the place? You didn't have any place to take them to.
Why didn't I want?
Want any of the pictures or anything in your old house? Is it that you just didn't want to cause trouble then? 'Cause
Oh, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
No, no way.
Right.
No. Till I got the house back,
Right.
it took 50 years. 50 years, yeah. Only in 1998, I got the house back, which I sold right away, of course.
Right.
Although I need a house in Poland.
Right.
So, in the meantime, the Polish housing authority took care of it, or didn't take care of it.
So did you lose all of your family pictures and everything?
I lost everything, yes.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. Then the war ends, okay, and you're in Krakow. How do you decide where you're going to go from there?
The decision was made for me. Here's what happened. When Krakow was liberated, the war was still on. So the Polish authorities needed soldiers to fight the Germans. So they took me. I had to report to be how do you say it?
Inducted into the army?
To be
Become a soldier.
Yeah.
Right.
So they checked me out, and the doctor checked me out whether what section of the army I will go in. So they found out that I have a heart murmur, and they gave me a non-front assignment. Not in the line, not in the front line, no front line duty.
Right.
So I say fine, and about 2 weeks later, I got a notice to report for duty. So as soon as I read this, I took a few of my belongings, and I think $5, that's all I had, and $5, I had a flashlight, a flat flashlight. I took the $5 in that flashlight because dollars were illegal at that time in Poland. And I already knew Ruth at that time, and myself, Ruth, and one of Ruth's girlfriends with me went to the train station, and we boarded a train with the goal to reach Italy. Now at that time, where millions of people were moving back and forth, refugees returning home, Italian POWs which were released, returning. There was no such thing as train tickets. You just found out where that train went, if it was to your destination, you just jumped on it and went. And nobody ever asked you any questions.
Right.
There was no borders, nothing yet. It was right after the war. There was total chaos. So we took a train. I think first we reached Prague, where we reported to the Jewish office there,
Relief office or something?
yeah. Also, at that time, every train station or wherever a train stopped had a kitchen, and people were fed. So we took advantage of that too. From Prague, we took another train to the border of Czechoslovakia with Austria. The name of that place was Budějovice, and there the Czechs had no love for Polacks, because the Poles, when in 1938 the Germans took over the Sudetenland, the Poles jumped and grabbed the city of Cieszyn, which was a Polish city, but belonged actually to Czechoslovakia. So they hated Poles. So they thought that we are spies, and they locked us up, me, Ruth, and her friend, in a schoolhouse overnight. They finally found out that we were not spies, so they let us go.
Did you have travel documents or anything like that?
No travel. No. Yes, I have a travel document from the Russians in Krakow. Before I left, I went and I asked for some kind of a paper telling me that I'm a refugee. And,
right. Okay.
And, so. What happened?
So
then?
you went from there. You're still on your way to Italy, right?
Yeah, I wanted to go to Italy.
Right.
So, let me see here.
Did you go to a camp in Italy? Is that where you ended up?
Oh yes, but no, not that fast.
Okay.
We let me see.
So you
From
got it.
Budějovice,
Right.
I saw an American convoy of American trucks go by. And they stopped. I told them, listen, I'm returning home, and can you give me a ride? They said, no, of course not. In broken English. So I told them that my stepfather is in the army, and so they didn't. But finally we found another truck, civilian truck, that took us to Austria, to Innsbruck. Was it? No, to Salzburg, the town famous for Mozart's hometown. So took us to Salzburg, where was a camp for refugees, mostly Jews, and that's where we stayed for some time. And we found out that the Jewish brigade attached to the British Army takes care of Jewish refugees, was the end goal to get them to Palestine at that time. So we registered there too, and we were under the jurisdiction of the Jewish brigade from that time on. After
How many months? How long has it been since you left Krakow at this point?
about a month.
Okay.
Or 5 weeks. So next, they transferred us to another beautiful little town in Austria, Innsbruck, to Innsbruck, where again was a camp made for Jewish refugees. And there is a thing that I still remember happened. One of the refugees was masquerading as a Jew, and actually he was an SS man who was a guard in a concentration camp, and he was recognized by some refugees, and they tore off his shirt to see if he has a tattoo, SS tattoo under his arm, because all the SS men, for one reason or another, had to have a tattoo marking them as SS men under their arm. He did have the tattoo, so they started to beat him, and they killed him with own hands, no weapon involved. They kicked him and beat him till they killed him. The American MPs came in, and he was already dead. Nobody was charged with anything. They took him away. This I will never forget, how they killed him with their bare hands. They killed him. So from there on, the Jewish Brigade arranged for us by train to go across the border to Italy, and we stopped in Bologna. Bologna. We stayed in Bologna for a week or two. We were housed in the former Italian military academy, a big building, very big building. After a week or so, they took us to another camp, this time to Modena, which was not far from Bologna. Modena, you know, the birthplace of Pavarotti came from Modena. So we went in Modena, and we stayed there with really nothing going on, so we decided, what are we waiting for? Let's go to Rome. So we did board the train to Rome. Again, no tickets or anything was necessary at that time. Still everything was free. So we came to Rome, which was about an 8 hours train ride. And there we registered at the Jewish office that took care of the Jewish refugees. And we were given a furnished room, and we moved in, myself and Ruth and her girlfriend. And we heard that one of the GIs at the train station, who takes care of transportation documents for GIs, for Americans, is a Jew and is very friendly to the Jewish refugees and supplies them with documents. So we went there, and sure enough, he gave us a little card that proved that we are refugees, with a facsimile signature of Eisenhower. And that was really good, because whenever we went, even the streetcars in Rome, we didn't have to pay. You just show them the card, and when they saw Eisenhower's signature, it was it. So we stayed in Rome for about quite a few months.
Were the Italians welcoming to you?
All Italians were very, oh yes. The Italians were exceptional. Yeah. As a matter of fact, it happened to be during the New Year of 1945, was it? Still, I think it was still 45. A Jewish family, Italian Jewish family that lived in Rome, invited us for a Yom Kippur dinner or something like that. And I couldn't believe it, that here they are after the war, still in their old apartment, with all their belongings intact. That's how the Italians were. They were very, very good. They saved a lot of Jews.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, where did you go once you were in Rome? You were in Rome for a few months, and then what happened?
before we got that furnished room in Rome, they had us housed at Cinecittà. Cinecittà is the Italian Hollywood. Those big
Homes?
yeah. Had us, and that's where we slept a few days, all a few days in Cinecittà. And then we got that room. Next, again the Jewish brigade came and they put us on a train and took us up north to Genoa, where next to Genoa, I forgot what the name of the place was, a small town next to Genoa, where they had a camp for Jewish refugees under the jurisdiction of the Jewish Brigade.
Right.
In preparation for a trip to Palestine. Now,
had Palestine already been opened up? In other words, Jews could go there at that point?
what?
Palestine was now accepting Jews?
No.
Okay, all right.
No, it was closed by the British. That camp in next to Genoa was made up to make segments of Jews to prepare us for the trip to Palestine. Now, the ship that was supposed to take us to Palestine was named Palmach for the fighting branch of Haganah. I and a friend of mine who were mechanics were taken by the Jewish brigade soldiers to the place where our ship, which was to take us to Palestine, was located. It happened to be still out of the water, supported by wooden stanchions, and it was being repaired. And I and a friend of mine, we were to build bunks for the eventual Jewish refugees. And we did that, and after a few days of work, the ship was launched into the water, and they did it perfectly. I didn't even know when it happened, when we got into the water. A little test was performed. That name of that place was next to Genoa was Spezia. Spezia. Now I remembered it. We took a little test, a few out in the Adriatic. It was okay, and it was decided to bring the 600 Jews, refugees, and put them aboard and start towards Palestine. At night we were loaded on trucks. I and my friend, we stayed on the ship. We were supposed to help people get over because they had to climb on a ladder, and we were up there helping them to get aboard. And
where was Ruth then?
Ruth was there too, but she was with the rest of the guys. I was the only one who was a friend of mine
On the ship.
on the ship already. And that was the second try to embark. The first, I forgot to mention, the first time we were brought over to the ship, somehow the Italian police got wind of it, and we had to abort the embarkation. But the second embarkation, which I'm talking about now, was okay.
And it was stopped probably because the British didn't want you to go to Israel?
Huh?
It was stopped probably because the British didn't want the Jews
That's
to get
right,
into Israel.
yeah. So finally we went aboard and we started sailing southward, still in sight of the Italian coast. We went with Elba on our right, the Italy on the left, and the other island was where Napoleon was born. What was the name?
Cyprus?
No.
Oh, off of Israel? I mean, off of Italy?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But anyway, you're heading south, and then did you go to Cyprus from there? Is that where you went?
No.
Where did you go?
We finally reached the bottom of Italy,
Right.
with Sicily on the other side.
Right.
We went through the Strait of Messina, I think it is, and we finally found ourselves in the Mediterranean. And after a week or so, we finally caught sight of Crete and later Cyprus, but the British discovered us. Planes were by planes, and two British destroyers started chasing us. They didn't stop us, they let us go, but they were on our tail all the time. And when we reached Haifa, they squeezed us, those two destroyers, one on each side, and we raised the Israeli flag and started singing the Hatikva, and we had some documents printed by the Jewish agency pronouncing us Jews returning to their homeland. Mm-hmm. Well, the British wouldn't buy that, and they in the distance we saw a freighter, Liberty ship, and they transferred us to that ship and took us to Cyprus. Cyprus, about a night sailing, one night. Cyprus was not too far away.
Right.
There they put us in a camp, number 61. I don't know. I think we were the 61st ship that they caught. That's why the camp was called. It was in a Cyprus port city of Famagusta. That's where our camp was, and that's where we stayed for quite some time.
How long were you there?
Oh, about 7 or 8 months.
Mm-hmm. How did you survive there? Did they feed you?
We got some rations.
From the British?
From the British. Yeah, and water, drinking water was supplied by tanks.
Right.
The water, you know. And we are tent. That was a tent city, tents. And I didn't know I didn't know how to erect the tents, and I saw that the lines that holding up the tent were slack, so I tightened them up. Now the first rain then came, those tightly stretched lines just pulled out of the ground,
Right.
and the whole tent collapsed.
So a young boy never learned how to put a tent up and crack
That's
out.
right. Yeah.
What did you do for money? Did they give you?
You didn't need any money.
Because they fed you and gave you a place
Yeah,
to
you
sleep.
didn't need any money.
Okay. So you're in Cyprus for 5 or 6 months. Then what happens?
We had to wait till our quota, monthly quota of legal immigrants would be admitted to Palestine by the British mandate.
So were you on a list, or was it
Yeah,
just?
yeah.
So did you get on that list when you were still in Italy, or were you on that list once you got to Cyprus?
In Cyprus. It was not a personal list, it was at Camp 61.
Right.
I was a part of Camp 61. Those who were at Camp 61 were finally allowed to go to.
So then you went back on a British ship.
On another Liberty ship, I even remember the name, Ocean Vigor.
Right.
Ocean Vigor was the name of that ship. One of the big Liberty ships.
Okay, I'm just stopping it there because. 1 second. So Adam, you were just telling me the story about how when the war was over, you went back and your mother was in her apartment.
Yeah, and I went back to the apartment where I know all my friends who survived were in.
And you said that your mother had gone to different camps, and she almost didn't make it.
Yes, I was in Ravensbrück, yes.
And so but that was near Berlin, right? And then she came back.
Ruth, chcesz mi podać sweeterio? Thank you.
So then she came back from Berlin to Poland.
College, no?
Yes.
So I put this in the.
She found a furnished room in our apartment house which we owned at one of the tenants who was an exception, friendly to Jews. She was very friendly. So that's where I met her at that. But I did not live there with her. I lived with 20 other Jews who survived, workers at the garage. See all these guys there on the picture.
Right.
Now, the Gestapo garage was turned into a Polish police garage. So, and we kept working there. And we lived in the apartment of the former German chief of the garage. The apartment looked like a hospital, you know, beds, about
Dormitories.
20 beds, one bed after the other. They found a bed for me too. Unfortunately, it wasn't. What do you want?
Go away.
In the room was only 2 beds in it.
Baby, in your room.
So I stayed there and I kept working at.
Come in.
And how did I? Why did I was the only one that did not stay in Krakow, had to go with the retreating Germans, because the Germans had more cars than drivers, so they used us as drivers. But
Come here.
I was the only one that happened to be in a car. When I got trapped in it, I just couldn't go. But I already had 2 passengers, German officers sitting behind me. So I had to go with the convoy, with the retreating Germans. All the others hid in the basement under a pile of coal, and somehow they did not had to go with the Germans. Not only this, but we were the only ones of all the Gestapo workers that were not deported. And that thanks to the garage chief, was a German SS officer. He was very strict, but he was not a Jew hater. So when the Germans started deporting all the workers that worked for them at the Gestapo, there were about 100 of them. With us 20 garage workers. We were quartered at the Gestapo prison in Krakow, and all those workers that worked for the Gestapo, not in the garage like tailors, shoemakers, and all the others, were in the prison at that time. And the Germans took them all to the train station and deported them to Germany, I don't know which concentration camp, but to a concentration camp. And the garage chief, the decent fellow, didn't want us to be deported, so he sent some of his helpers to the train station, and kept us in the garage till the train left. So that's how we stayed in Krakow after the war.
Okay.
Now,
well, you know what? Why don't you have another piece of pizza, and then I want to just start so we get it time-wise from early to later.
Okay.
Okay.
Take another piece.
I'm fine. I'm fine. Thanks. Just gonna stop this for 1 second. So Ruth is able to join us now. We're now talking about leaving Cyprus on the British Liberty ship Ocean Vigor to go to Israel. Okay? Or I guess at that time it's still Palestine, right?
Yeah.
Ruth, what was that like? What was it like leaving Cyprus?
We were very happy
Okay.
to go to Israel. But then we came to Israel, we went again to the camp athlete, it's called. All the Jews need to stay there for a while. So we didn't know what will be, so we got really, was really funny that we need to go to camp after in Israel.
Here was this thing. When we got to Haifa, coming from Cyprus, there was a column of buses waiting for us at the port, and they took us to another camp in Israel, in Palestine, not far from Haifa. The camp was called Atlit, and we were supposed to wait there till our papers, making us legalizing our immigration will be ready, which took about a month. So we were locked up in that camp for about a month. A
And we were separated.
We were separated because
The husband separate and the wife separate.
because the men and women had separate huts. There.
But you were at the same camp, you just weren't in the
Same
same.
Yes,
camp.
separate
Yeah.
barracks like.
After months there, they took us to another camp in Kiryat Shmuel.
And these are camps that are being run by the British?
No, that other camp
This
was run by the Jewish agency already.
Okay.
We were already legal, but we still had to be in camp to find out
Where are we going?
what they're gonna do with us, or what we would.
So what year would this be now?
Pardon?
What year would this be?
That
This was 47. no?
47.
So it's before Israel was formed?
Before Israel,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay,
We were still under the
British
British
rule.
mandate.
okay. So you're at a second camp now?
Yes.
And then what happens?
Yeah.
You're waiting for your papers?
You had aunt there in
Yeah, I
Tel
had.
Aviv.
I had, and my aunt, my mother's sister, escaped the Holocaust and moved to Palestine in 1936. She married in order to be able to reach Palestine, she had to marry someone that had legal papers to go to Israel. And that man was a cousin of mine who was deported from Germany to Poland, Alfred. She married him, but that was, a fake marriage only in order to
Get the papers?
get the papers. So he came to visit us at that second camp in Israel, and he gave us some money because there was a little store where you could buy something if you wanted. And after about a month,
I don't remember exactly.
a month or two stay in the camp, finally our final papers were ready and we were released. And I and Ruth, we went to that aunt of mine that came to Israel, to Palestine before the war.
Right.
And we stayed there for a month or two or so,
Yes.
approximately
I don't
for a
remember
month.
exactly.
And she found an apartment for us, or rather a furnished room in a housing development where mostly Polish refugees, Polish Jews lived. And we moved there. And I was looking for employment at that time, and I got work at a junkyard whose owner was also a friend of my aunt at that time. And I worked there for 5 or 6 months till another friend of mine, the one that built those bunks on the ship, ferry, he got work at the biggest firm in Israel that builds roads, bridges, and all that stuff. Very big. Solal Boneh was the name of that firm, and he arranged for me to work there. But I had to move to Haifa because their garage was in Haifa. So we moved to Haifa, and for a while we stayed with the cousin of mine that with Alfred, whose faked marriage enabled my aunt to go to Palestine. Now he was married now to somebody else, of course, but we stayed with him for for a short while till we found a room for ourselves. And I got to work.
And we went to Józek.
Oh, yeah, we had another friend of
That
mine
worked with you.
who used to work with me in the Gestapo garage during the war. He was already in Palestine, so he took us in also for a while till we found a place of our own, which we did finally.
Ruth, did you work at all during this period? Were you?
Yes, I worked
What did you
also
What
in
did you
the
do?
factory,
Doing what?
doing some
Chocolate,
chocolates, cans
factory.
also, vegetables and like this.
So both of you worked and you had a room
Yeah.
where you lived. Okay.
Yeah. But
So
then
that
we
would have
moved
been
to-
1946, 47?
47,
47?
Israel was
48 was when they became
Yeah,
a
I think
country.
yeah, I remember when Israel was established.
So then you continued to live in Israel.
Oh yeah.
And then how did you find living in Israel as being a political refugee or refugee from the war? Was it a relief to be there, or what was it
Of
like?
course,
Of
yeah.
course, was
Yes,
because you're
there was
free.
no, yeah. Most of Israelis came from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Very few were born Israelis.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no discrimination of any kind of new arrivals.
Okay. And how long until you had your first child?
Lyra was born in
53.
53.
So about 4 years later.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
Then what happened? Because you left Israel. Why did you leave Israel?
His mother wanted him to come.
My mother was, in meantime, she moved from London to New York.
We missed that part of the story. When did your mother go to London?
She went to London a year or two after the war. My stepfather, who escaped and wound up in London during the war, he joined the Polish army. And he was an officer in the Polish army in the legal department because he was a lawyer. And after the war, he arranged for my mother to come to London.
Okay.
And I don't remember how long they lived in London, but they wound up finally in
United States.
in the United States.
So then your mother wanted you to come to the United States.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
I couldn't get out of it. I had to come.
Uh-huh.
It took
According to your mother.
yeah. It took how long? Maybe 3 years till my visa
Right.
came through.
Yeah. First Adam went and then I came.
And I couldn't come with her. I had to come first.
And what year did you
become-
come? What year did you come to the United States?
Pardon?
What year did you come to the United States?
I came to the United States in 57.
57.
57. No, wait a minute. Wait, what am I talking about? Let me see. Yeah, I think it was 57. Yes.
Okay, so you were actually in Israel for 10 years then.
Yes.
Okay, so for
Yeah, 10 years, that's all.
And then after the 10 years, about 3 years before you left, you filled out the papers to come to the United States. About 1954.
Right.
And then you came in 57, and what year did Ruth come to the United States?
58.
Another year later.
Few months later.
Okay.
I came in October 57. She came in March of 58.
And how did you get to the United States?
I
In the
by ship.
by ship from Israel. Israeli ship.
Israeli ship, which Israel got as part of reparations from Germany. A beautiful, brand new ship. SS Israel.
Did a lot of Jews from Israel emigrate at the same time with you? Is that what was going on? A lot of people, or were some people just doing it just to travel?
I had no idea. I couldn't tell who was an Israeli going to America or who was just going for a trip. No, I don't know.
Okay.
I
And
didn't-
Ruth,
I didn't know.
how did you get to the United States? Did you on the boat also?
Yeah.
Okay. And when you came to the United States, you went to New York, where your
Yeah, to New
mother
York.
was there.
Not to the mother. We have an apartment.
Yeah, but you got an apartment,
In the
but-
meantime, I rented an apartment.
Okay. And when you arrived in New York, did you just what kind of immigration did you have when you came to the United States? Ellis Island was closed by then, right? So where did you go? Did you just have a passport and a visa, and you just get off the boat?
I had a green card.
Okay.
Green card was the legal document pronouncing you a legal immigrant, not an illegal.
And what did you do when you arrived here? Did you have a job, or did you
I
find
didn't
it?
have a job, no, not at all. I tried to get a job, and I couldn't get a job because I did not know automatic transmission repairs.
Right.
So I went to school, took a course of automatic transmission repairs, and I finally got a job for in the garage of the branch of the White Motor Company.
And then how did you? Was that while you were living in New York?
Yes.
How did you end up moving to Vineland? How did that happen? Ruth, why don't you explain that? What's your sense of how you got from New York
We
to
have
Vineland?
friends here.
We have
From
friends
Poland?
who were friends in Israel, in Palestine, and who came to America, and they wound up in Vineland. And every vacation that I had, I came to Vineland to visit with them. So, and I decided to move from New York to Vineland. My mother, you know, your relations with my mother.
It wasn't very good.
You want to talk about it?
No.
No. So, you know, that was one of the reasons that I had to move out of New York.
Okay. So Vineland had a rather large Jewish population.
Oh, yes.
And it was an agricultural community,
Yes.
really.
Yes,
So,
right.
but that started before World War II, right? There were Jews
Oh,
coming
yes,
to Vineland.
yes.
So he
Yeah.
came to Vineland, and that was the attraction for you because you knew someone here. then,
Yes.
right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So when you came to Vineland, you didn't have a job yet either, right?
Yeah, I went looking for a job, and I went to the factory branch of Mack trucks, and I was Mack. In Israel, I worked mostly on Macks. I was an expert on Mack repairs. So I went to the Mack place here, and when they saw my credentials, they hired me on the spot. So I had a job. I didn't have an apartment yet.
Was your son born yet, or
No.
so?
No, he was born late.
She was born in 61.
61.
So you were living here for a couple of years, and then
Yeah.
he was born.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So what when you look back on this process, when you got to Vineland, was your reception here welcoming by?
Very, very welcome.
yes,
We had a
well.
lot of friends, and we found friends from Krakow,
Right.
and you know.
We're still friendly with them. Those that are
I
left.
found a friend that she was also in concentration camp where I was in Skarżysko, and then I found the work at YMCA. I was instructor for gymnastics,
Right.
and I was teaching ballet to children because in Israel I went to school to ballet, but before when I was 5 years old I started to learn dancing and ballet. So
Okay.
I was teaching ballet and gymnastics for 10 years at YMCA.
Okay.
And he was working in the Met.
And I was working for Mac, and they made me a foreman there, as kind of a manager. They were very happy to hire me because they had nobody that knew anything about fixing Mac transmissions or the differentials and stuff, which I was quite familiar with.
Let me ask you another question, just to sort of bring it more up to the present time. Vineland today is a community that has a lot of immigrants,
Right.
a lot of Hispanics.
Yes, a lot.
So how does that, either for yourselves or for the community, do you see playing out, you know, with illegal immigrants, with illegal immigrants, with a community that has a lot of immigrants that came over like yourselves?
Yeah.
Is it a more welcoming community? Is there friction? How do you view that situation today in Vineland?
We don't mix up really.
I don't really, I couldn't tell you. I have no Hispanics or black friends, so I don't know.
Right.
But
They're sort of just separate communities.
yes,
Yeah.
but as far as the Jewish
The
refugees,
Jews
they
called
were
themselves
well,
together.
very, very welcome. No problems there.
But do you view the neighborhood, I mean the town of Vineland, as having a lot of conflict, or people just go their own separate ways?
I don't know really. We don't mix up, so I don't know.
Right. Okay.
When Leora was alive, she liked to mix up with everybody. She
Right.
likes everybody.
Right.
And she has friends here and there, you know, with all kinds of people.
Right. Okay. Well, listen, I want to thank both of you for taking the
You're
time.
very welcome.
Okay, and I'm sure my students will enjoy hearing this, and
I
whoever
hope
else, you know, we show it to. And I'm sure your son and your grandchildren,
Oh,
they'll
yes, they
enjoy
will
seeing
enjoy
it as well.
too.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much for you.
Okay,
For your
bye-bye.
time. Okay, bye.
And whatever I missed, you will find in the